Right, I think I'm live. Everyone, this is my first time live streaming on Substack, so I'm kind of learning as I go here. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat. I'm also going to drop a link if you want to join via voice. I would probably prefer that. This is pretty cool. I'm seeing some names joining up that I recognize from the comments on the Substack. Hi there, Dawn. Good to see you. For anybody joining you now, I'm just going to ask that you be a little bit patient. This is my first time live streaming on Substack, so I'm kind of like learning where everything is. Hey, Georgia, yeah, no problem. I appreciate you hopping on. And just to make sure, can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Okay. Awesome. Thank you. You're just checking really quick that the stream is live on the other platforms too. That looks good. Oh, hey there, Laurie. Welcome in. Yeah, I think I'm all set up now. So the first thing that I wanted to know is if you guys have any questions about the American Manifesto in general. Um, any thoughts on topics that I've covered so far? Anything that you guys think might be left that we should cover? Oh, no problem, Georgia. Let me see. What time is it for you? Where you at? So if we don't have any questions just yet, I'm just gonna start going over a few things that I've noticed that are going on right now that I think is pretty interesting. The first thing that I think it's pretty interesting right now is the whole thing of the tariffs. I think it's pretty insane how much we're going up and down. One minute we're going to have tariffs, the next minute we're not going to have tariffs, and I don't know what it is that the administration is trying to do. I think that one thing that's being put out there that's kind of interesting is the idea that maybe these guys are just trying to make money. You know, basically, Trump can announce that the tariffs are coming in. That hurts the markets. Prices go down. His billionaire friends can basically buy a bunch of stock. Then he says, you know what? Actually, we're not going to put the tariffs in. Stocks go back up. They get rich. Uh, I'm starting to wonder if that's part of it. I still think that if I had to guess, that it's really a manufactured crisis that they're trying to do. Let me read this here. Um, yeah, Mrs. S. That did come up earlier. A judge has now allowed the Doge kids to get into the treasury. I don't know if I mean we're never going to know what kind of damage that's going to do. I think that it's pretty crazy, but it's part of the reason why I've been writing so much about how we can't keep just waiting for the courts to fix everything because it's just the way that the court system works, right? They're designed to deal with the damage after the fact. They're not there to prevent the damage from taking place. And I love guys like Mark Elias. I think he's one of the most important lawyers in the country, and even a bunch of other lawyers too. There are some over at the Contrarian that are really great that are suing the Trump administration all over the country. But I think that a lot of people are sitting back, waiting for them to save us. And the problem with that is that they can't do anything until somebody is able to sue, meaning that the damage has already taken place, right? So if there is a leak at the Treasury and all of our Social Security numbers get compromised, we can sue them. Um, if if people start dying because the hospitals aren't working because they've cut funding, then we can sue them. But the problem is that by the time that happens, we're now in deep trouble. So we really need to find a way to really turn public opinion around. I'm a firm believer. Lincoln has a really powerful quote that basically adds up to the idea that with public sentiment, anything can succeed, and without it, nothing can succeed. And I think that that's what we need to be going for, and that's what the Democratic Party needs to be going for. Um, I think that Jeffries and Schumer are sitting around acting like their hands are tied up, but that's not really true. If finally they're starting to look into going to Republican districts and talk to the people there, and I think that that's something that should have had started on day one on January 20th. But it's better late than ever. But ultimately, we really need to turn public opinion around. Can we make the dams more active, though? Uh, so one thing that I always say is that the Democratic leadership feels like they're not really a leadership; they're a followship. All that they do is follow the polls. So I think if we want them to really get on it, it's going to be up to people like us to really get the messaging going, to really make some noise. And then once they see that we are there, once we see that we're behind a strong message, then they're going to follow us instead of it being the way that it should be, where they have a strong message and then we follow them. It's going to have to be the other way around. We're going to have to come up with a message and then they're going to follow us. And it's pretty interesting. I've watched some of the live streams, even when they were, I think they were outside of the Treasury. and Elizabeth Warren was there. You know, a lot of the big names were there, and Ezra Levin from Indivisible was there, and you could see that he had the strongest message of them all, and people started getting riled up. So it's good to have people like Indivisible pushing the message, but I feel like even their message is not that strong. So Don is asking, you know, what is the message? My opinion, you know, if you read any of the stuff I said, is that we have to get on a total offensive. We have to be willing to go out there and say, you know, the this is a fascist movement. This is no longer the Republican Party. It's the fascist party. And I think that the key is that we have to be very careful with how we deliver that message, because if we just call Republican voters all fascists, they're all going to unite and they're all going to get defensive. And then we're never going to be able to defeat them. It's going to be like when, you know, it's the whole MAGA thing. You know, I have an article about how we should even stop calling the MAGA. But I think that we really need to sow division between the party and the cult members, because the Republican Party is basically a cult. And what we need to do is get people to split up from the party. They need to realize that they've been scammed, because that's the truth. Going all the way back to the 80s, even the 70s, the Republican Party has been literally brainwashing the right. And I know that we all want to be pissed at everybody that votes for Republicans, and you know they deserve it. And you know, I have family members that are MAGA. You know, my brother, who I helped raise, is MAGA, and it's very difficult dealing with that. But at the end of the day, and I'm gonna use this word, but I want to use it carefully. They're victims too, because they're both victims and they're the culprits at the same time, because they're definitely hurting a lot of people, but they're also getting hurt in the process. They've been getting brainwashed for a really long time. And so I think that the way that the message needs to work is to say, hey, look at what your party has done. They're straight up fascists. Is that who you want to be? And I think that if we can deliver the message like that, then we've got a strong shot at literally dividing and conquering the Republican Party, and being able to turn public opinion around. And I don't know how that will go. I mean, there is a part of me that feels like they'll actually be kind of scary, because you know, we're talking about Republicans here. They're the gun nuts. They're the ones that are always talking about the Second Amendment and all that. So I don't know what will happen if they all realize, like, at the same time, that they've been scammed for the last 40, 50 years. And when I say realize, I mean really absorb it, really take it in. And then all of a sudden, you've got, you know, God knows, tens of millions of people armed to the teeth, who are coming to accept that they've been told to hate half of the other half of the country, just so that these elites could take advantage of them. So I don't know what happens at that point, but and honestly, I don't care too much, because it's just them coming to accept the truth at that point. But it's like, we really need to attack the Republican Party as an institution, more so than attacking the Republican Party as everyone that votes for them. Just read some of the messages here. Nancy saying, yes, being real strong, but staying respectful. We want to share light. There's too much darkness. Yeah, that's exactly right. The idea is to really, I don't know if any of you have ever read about cults. You know, I've read about it quite a bit now with everything that's been going on, and it's essentially what it is. It's cult psychology, right? It's no different than Scientology. It's no different than any of the crazy cults that have been around, except that they are massive. They wield a lot of political power, and they've literally been abusing all of their base. So the whole point is like we don't want to come at it like the whole fuck around find out thing. We really like, I get it, and sometimes I see the stuff online and I'm like kind of like enjoying a little bit when they're hurting because they brought it on themselves. But I very quickly tried to move past that and realize that these people have literally been getting brainwashed now for 30, 40, 50 years. There are people who have, think about it. If you're a 30-year-old living in a Republican family, your entire life has been a lie, essentially. I don't know how much you guys have looked into it, but the um, the Republican Party, evangelicals, they didn't even used to care about abortion until the late 70s. Um, it's all coming from a political strategist. Some of you may recognize the name. His name is Paul Weyrich, and he's really the mastermind behind the entire Republican movement that we have now. He's the one that united the corporations with the evangelicals, and it's all been manufactured. All the culture wars, everything has been all about gaining power and delivering it to the corporations. And that's how we get Reaganomics. That's how we get trickle down. That's how we get all of that. That's how we get Reagan talking about the welfare queens. That's how we get um, them attacking the safety net. That's how we get deregulation. It's I'm working on an article right now, and the whole idea behind it, and you'll probably be going out tomorrow, is we one of the things we need to do with our messaging, we need to stop fighting against the idea that there is a deep state. They like to talk about it all the time. Oh, there's a deep state. All the unelected bureaucrats. They talk about George Soros, and the truth of it is that there is actually a deep state. When you look at the Heritage Foundation, when you look at ALEC, when you look at the Federalist Society, um, the there are all these groups that have been built for the last uh, 40 to 50 years, and they've been designed to control the government from the outside. So there is a deep state. And I think that might be a really good point to start the conversation with people on the other side, which is to agree with them that, you know what, you're right. There is a deep state. We need to stop fighting that, because I think we can start from that point of agreement and then start shining the light on actually here is where the deep state is, and show them how they've become a part of the deep state through all of the brainwashing and all the propaganda that's being pushed for 50 years now. So um, I think that's probably a good place to start, and then we start showing them how it really is a fascist movement. If you think about it, I've got some pushback online where people are like, oh, we can't call them fascist or this or that, but they really are. If you look at it, because you've got a charismatic leader that constantly demands loyalty above everything. They want, Trump wants his entire base and everybody under him to be loyal to him, not to the country, not to the Constitution, not to each other, just to him. Um, they do not care about the Constitution. They're trying to consolidate power, which is another hallmark of fascism. They uh, they keep talking. I mean, just talking about uh, territorial expansion. I really did not think until the inauguration that they were going to try to do the whole Greenland and Panama. I really, I was when I I started talking about them being fascists before the inauguration, and that was the one thing that was missing. You know, it was a territory expansion, and now we even have that. So everything that it takes to have a fascist government, they've checked every one of it. You know, and I have articles about that. So I think the key is to say, hey, you guys are right. There's a deep state, but the deep state is not the thing that you've been led to believe. The deep state, it's the Heritage Foundation, it's ALEC, it's the Federalist Society, you know, and they're not here for you. You know, because when you look at these fascist movements, even throughout history, and it doesn't have to be just the Nazis in Germany, it can be Mussolini in Italy, it can be Franco in Spain. They don't care about the people. They only care about the people that give them power, which in our case is going to be all your large corporations, right? So that's why when you look at, you know, Trump's inauguration, you see the billionaires there, right? You don't see anybody there that represents the people. Who did you have there? You had Bezos there, you had Zuckerberg there, you had Elon there, just the billionaires. So it's the message has to be a message that splits the cult leaders from the cult members. And I don't know that we can save the country without doing that. Because and here's my biggest fear. You know, I've talked to some people online, and I've been to some Twitter spaces where there are people that are democratic strategists or people that have worked in campaigns, and they got some internal connections, and they're talking about how, you know, the plan right now, it's like what Schumer said, we're just going to chill, we're gonna, you know, just stay here and wait for them to collapse all on their own. And the problem, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen because when you're dealing with a cult, they can always spin whatever is in front of them. If we wait for Trump to succeed in causing an economic crisis, and I think that that's what he's trying to do, because if you add up the tariffs, plus mass deportations, plus firing hundreds of thousands of federal employees, there is no way that we don't end up with an economic crisis. And so I think that that's the goal, right? So their goal is create a crisis, and then people will be willing to give up their rights to have the guy at the top fix things. You know, that's how it has always happened with consolidation of power in fascist governments. And if we just cross our arms and wait for that to happen, they will spin that with propaganda, and they will succeed in consolidating power. And that's why I get so pissed off when I'm like on Blue Sky or whatever. And, you know, I was just arguing with somebody just before I got online when I got the email from Substack. We cannot let that happen, because they will spin it if they have total control of the narrative, and then their base will fall in line, and then we're screwed. So we really need to build a movement of people that have that strong messaging. I don't know how it's hard, because, you know, the American Manifesto has been growing pretty quickly, but, you know, the algorithm is still the algorithm. It's very hard for me to get the word out there. So one thing that I will ask, you know, try to help get the message out there as much as possible so that we can grow it. But we really need, like, our biggest problem is time now, because I can see the message resonating. I can see some other creators that are really starting to call them fascists, who are willing to have the right message. but my fear is that it's not growing fast enough. Just some credit to some of the people I've seen with the right kind of messaging. Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk. I don't know if anybody here watches him. He's had a pretty good messaging. There is this guy I just came across his YouTube channel. I think his name is Jesse Dollamore. He doesn't hold back either. He's got good messaging. But Tim Walz, our almost vice president, he got caught in a private recording calling them fascists. So the word is starting to go out there. The messaging is starting to build. But my fear is that it's not happening fast enough. And my second fear, and it started this week, they're starting to slow down, right? So Doge was going on a rampage before, and that was riling people up on our side. They slowed down quite a bit this week. And I think that is when they're going to be at their most dangerous, because if they do this slowly, if they try to slow cook the frog, then the pushback that we're seeing from our side is going to start cooling down, and then they might be able to execute their plan as well. So we also have to figure out a way to keep our people engaged, even if Trump is starting to slow things down. So I don't know how we do that either, because people are really bad with their attention span. So I don't know that part. I don't know. I can do a lot of the messaging strategy, but how to keep our side engaged, I'm not sure how we do that. Let me just read a couple messages here. We can issue call them fascists. What is going on in this admin classic Mussolini? Yeah, for sure. Watch the movie Vice. I've never watched that one before. Thank you, Maria, for the recommendation. I'll definitely check it out. I know that Vigilante Inc. and Bad Faith are very good documentaries. If anybody here hasn't watched those two, so definitely check them out. And Don saying, but we need to split the cult members, and the majority that voted for him, I don't believe all 77 million drank the Kool-Aid. Oh, I agree with that 100%. I think it's hard to put a number to it, Don, but I think that there's at least about a 30% of Trump's base that is not at all well informed. They are not like, they don't love him. They just see what's on the news. They see some political ads and they pick a side. They tend to be Republican. So, unless something is really off, they'll vote Republican. But then if all you're doing is watching Fox News or Joe Rogan or Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro or OANN, you're always going to keep voting Republican. They're never going to show you anything that makes you go the other way. So it's that's the biggest problem that we have there. It's the echo chamber, and those 30% are the people that I think we really need to go for, and they're easy pickings if we can break through the echo chamber and talk to them from the perspective of like, look, you guys, you're being taken advantage of, and right now is the perfect time because the whole project 2025 is hurting them. They are seeing it, but for the most part, all they're getting is their own propaganda. So we do need to find a way to cut through that. Yeah, time is definitely a factor. Yes, and said these people fear heart power, real feelings. Ego takes over few. Very destructive power trip. The big money issue is a problem also. Power, these people are living in the distorted reality. Yeah, it's a cult. I mean, I don't know. There is no other way to put it. It is a literal cult. And again, the one thing that we have going for us is that, again, if we use that messaging that I was talking about before, of saying we agree there is a deep state, and let me show you what that deep state is. It's all there. And one thing that I was thinking about that's actually could be pretty interesting is that because X, Twitter, or whatever, because they've got Grok, and Grok is a thing that's built into that platform that they love. One thing that I'm about to try to do is ask Grok certain questions that date back to the 70s and the 80s and see what kind of replies that it gives. And I'm going to start using Grok to try and break through the echo chamber on X, right? Because if I ask something like, hey, did Paul Weyrich manipulate the Republican Party and especially the evangelicals into caring about abortion? And did they not used to care about abortions before? I know for a fact that Grok is going to reply the right answer, right? So then I can just share, because Grok allows you to share the stuff you ask, and I can just give it to the people right there on Twitter. Here, it's not me saying it. I just asked you the question. Here's the answer from your platform that you guys love and trust, right? So there is a lot of questions that we can ask Grok and use that as a weapon against, Elon and against Trump and everything, because then it's not, did Grok get taken over by the liberals and by the Democrats? So that's one thing that I've been thinking about. So I'm going to start using that, and thanks for the feedback. I see everybody thinks it's a good idea. So I think it's a good way to use their own platforms against them. And speaking of platforms, one of the things I've talked about quite a bit is we need to really try and get people on our side to not completely leave those platforms. And this might not be a popular take. Some of you that are watching might get mad at me, but here's my long-term plan. If we can get 1,000 people, just 1,000 people, to really learn our messaging, to really get good messaging discipline, and I'll go back to what I mean by messaging discipline in a bit. But if we can get that, and we can get 1,000 people on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and if we have 1,000 people that each has 1,000 followers, we can do some real damage to their entire movement. Just think of Laura Loomer, like she's one person, and think about how much engagement and how much craziness she can drive, just one person. Now imagine if we had 1,000 of us on our side. And the reason why I say 1,000 is because we definitely are disadvantaged with the algorithm. I have no doubt that Elon has something going on the back end, that anything that goes against Trump gets pushed down. But I have no doubt that there is a number, and I'm thinking maybe it's 1,000, but there is a number that if we can get that critical mass, we can defeat the algorithm. So that's the plan. We got to get about 1,000 people that understand the message, that have the messaging discipline, and then we can turn the algorithm against them. We can turn Grok against them. We can turn the algorithm against them, and we can start taking back those platforms. And if we do that, that will go a long way towards controlling public opinion, because a lot of what ends up on the news today, it starts on those platforms. I was just watching a video from, I think it was Kyle Kulinski, and he was covering how this one thing that started on X with somebody that had something like 10,000 followers or something. They made up some kind of nonsense. and then he got picked up by somebody that had 50,000 followers, and next thing you know, it was on Fox News. So if we can disrupt that feedback loop, we can do massive damage to their movement. We can do massive damage to the cult. So that's why I keep telling people, especially if you have an existing account on X, if you have an existing account on Threads or Instagram or Facebook that has a lot of followers, I understand if it's too much to deal with it right now and you just want to check out, just don't delete the account. Let the account go dormant for now. The time will come when we can reactivate that account and we can literally weaponize that account against the cult to take back those platforms. So that's my sort of my long-term plan for what I would like to do. And I hope that kind of makes sense. Let me read some of the messages here. Yeah, I agree with Margaret, right? And to answer Laura's question, I think that the key is that if we start using Grok, for one, they would have to delete all the questions that had been asked before. But if we start using Grok, and my idea is I'm going to ask a lot of questions before I start using it so that I can store all of the answers, right? So then, if they do manipulate Grok after the fact, then now we can kind of turn that against them, right? Because one of the things that MAGA hates the most, whether they apply it correctly or not, is the idea that they're being manipulated, right? That the deep state is controlling everything. So imagine that, just to use the example I gave earlier, imagine if I have asked the question about Paul Weyrich and turning abortion into a political weapon. If one day the answer to that question just becomes something completely different, and we have the records of what Grok answered before, then how do they explain that, right? And not only that, you can look up that information outside of Grok too, and that's like very well documented. So if they do try to manipulate it, then I think then we weaponize that against them, right? Because we can show, hey, Grok was giving this answer before. How come it's giving a completely different answer now? So it's all about, sort of like documenting everything and thinking about it strategically and being prepared to weaponize anything that they do against them. So, like, for example, just to demonstrate, one of the things that I wrote the other day was that for Trump's address to Congress, I thought that the Democrats, all of them, should have worn a shirt that said something like "Goebbels speaks." And anytime Trump lied, they should just have yelled out one time, each time, "Goebbels speaks." And why would that work? One, because we are basically calling him a fascist, right? And two, they only have two options. Option one, they would have to let us do it. Option two, they would have to kick out every single Democrat. And if they kicked out every single Democrat for challenging what Trump is saying, then they're acting like fascists, which is exactly what we're calling them. So then the next day, the Democrats could have all gone into the media sphere and gone around and saying, see, we said he's just like Goebbels, right? He's a fascist, and he proved it, right? If you had any doubt, you can just look at his actions. So that would have been a win-win strategy. And that's one thing that kind of pisses me off with the Democrats is that they're not unified, right? It's crazy that Al Green was the only one that got up when he did. If that was the plan, they should have all gotten up with him and forced them to kick them all out. And then you had the one little group with the signs, and then most of them had no plan. They just sat there. So they need a unified message. They need it to be a offensive message, and they need it to be a win-win strategy. Let me see what Margaret and Nancy have here. And being strong, genuine, caring people, speaking out from the heart and soul is helpful, even healing. Yeah, I agree with Nancy 100%. Like, and one thing that we have to be able to do, which is kind of hard, and I know it because I struggle with it as well, even with family members that are MAGA, is to really accept that the people who are in MAGA, they believe that they are doing the right thing for the country, right? There are very few people that I could even point to, in the base that have some kind of like hatred towards America, that wants the country to fail or something like that. I don't think there's many people that feel that way. And even though they vote in a way that is hurting the country, they're not doing it because they ideologically hate America. They do it because they've been literally brainwashed into hating the people that they hate, right? So for 50 years now, the Republican Party has been telling these people, that gay people and lesbians and the LGBTQ and the welfare queens, they've been pushing to their brains that these people are demons who hate the country, that are destroying America. And when you're in an echo chamber where that's all you hear, you're eventually going to believe it. They are very good in messaging. They're very good into putting slogans together. They're very good they're just very good at messaging. And somebody said earlier, right, that we are too nuanced, and I agree 100%. You are not going to defeat short, memorable, repeatable slogans with nuance, facts, and statistics. That will not happen. That's exactly right, Georgia. It's indoctrination. It's pure cult psychology. And because, it really goes to the monkey brain. If you can get somebody tied up emotionally to an ideology or a belief, you are not going to untie that person with logic. And it hurts me to say this because I am a very logic driven person. You probably can't tell that much from my writings, but it's because I've had to adapt a lot. You can ask my wife. My vows were half about logic, and the reason why I knew I was going to be with her forever. Like, logic has been most of my life has been about logic. So I have had to accept that you cannot logic with people that have been indoctrinated through emotions. So we really need to stop. The essays are good amongst ourselves. The essays, the statistics, the facts, that's all good so that we can reinforce and build the conviction of our message. But when we're delivering it to the people on the other side, it needs to be packaged in short slogans that are easy to repeat, that are easy to remember, and that hit really hard. That there is no other way to deal with it. The only other thing that I would add to that is that you never want to, from what I have read about cults and how you deal with it, you never want to try and make it an argument that you're trying to win and get the other person to give you a concession right in the moment. If you try to do that, you will push them away, and you are going to lose them. So the idea is that you want to drive doubt, and you want to drive a sense of betrayal between the cult members and the cult leaders, right? So you want your message to be strong, but you don't want them to try and get them to change their minds in the moment, right? So if you say, okay, oh, Trump is a fascist, they're going to give you some pushback. Here's why he's definitely a fascist. Here's why he definitely does not care about America. And then you leave it at that, right? Maybe they'll give you some pushback, maybe they won't, but you're not trying to get them to convert right there in the moment. And number one, it's not going to happen in one conversation. And number two, it's not going to happen right there in the moment. It's going to be something that you have to talk to that person multiple times. And after you've talked to them, they will think back to the things you said, and that doubt will build up, and eventually it will break through to them. Now, the thing that helps is if we are able to get a lot of people to do the same thing, right? Because imagine, let's pretend, one, like my brother, he's MAGA, right? If I'm the only person in his entire life that points out the fact that Trump is a fascist and that it's a cult that's lying to him and to other people like him, it's going to be so much harder for his mind to change when his entire echo chamber is still reinforcing the cult. Where, on the other hand, if we all are doing it, and then, if it just so happens that one of you guys happens to know my brother, and you're also talking to him and kind of saying the same thing, then you'll be much more likely that we break through, and that will happen much faster. So numbers are very important when it comes to this. It's going to be very difficult to succeed if we don't have more people. So let me read some of the messages here. Do you think that if Dems did as you said during the State of the Union, that the mainstream outlets would have given the Dems a sounding board? They're not really giving the Dems fair coverage, or they're very limited coverage. So one of the things that Republicans were able to do in the past, even in social media, I remember the early days of Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and all those guys. Democrats need to learn how to literally taunt the media. They need to call them out as cowards. Like if I'm Jasmine Crockett, or if I'm AOC, I am taunting Fox News every day to invite me on their plan, on their platform. And I'm taunting them. I'm calling them a coward. I'm saying, hey, when are you guys going to invite me? And that's not something that we do. That is super easy. Just call them pathetic. Just say, hey, you guys are too afraid to talk to me. Hey, Laura Ingraham, give me bring me into your show. Let's have a chat. Or are you too scared to talk to me? That's what I think Democrats should be doing. And I don't see it. It's part of when I say that Democrats don't have a spine, that's kind of what I mean. Let me see. I agree with the short slogans. Yep, the messaging does have to be unified, and that's a massive problem. I think, and this might sound kind of mean, this might sound kind of like, I don't know, but I think that one big problem that Democrats have is that we value. It's funny because Republicans like to say that they care about individualism, but when you really look at it, they all fall into the same message, right? Whereas Democrats, I feel like we're the ones that really value individualism, and sometimes to our own detriment, right? We want everybody to have their own voice. We want everybody to deliver their own message. And look, I don't have a problem with that idea in principle. If hey, I think that Razzle must be a bot. So Razzle, I'm gonna let you go because I don't think you're being very helpful for this. Let's figure out how we do that though. I'm not sure how to. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just trying to figure out how to moderate the chat here. Okay, yeah, let's try to do that for now, and then can try and figure it out. But hopefully throw my thought off here. All right, so let me read Nancy's message. This is due to their low self-esteem. Sadly, many MAGA members have not gone far with education. Sadly, many I have had to deal with did not finish high school. Yeah, I mean, so the education thing, one thing that I like to tell people is um, people don't need to be too educated to be explained to what's going on, right? So that's where I think that the messaging needs to be really simple, and we need to make sure that we're not trying to lecture people. If you drive a strong, simple message that's easy to repeat, and if they give you pushback, if you're able to reply right back with the facts, then I think that that's also very powerful, right? So that's the only time when you do the facts. It's when they give you pushback, you hit them with the facts. So with Paul, the whole Paul Weyrich or Leonard Leo with the Federalist Society, like one thing that you want to tell them is like, hey, all of the people that have been put in the Supreme Court right now, they were handpicked by one guy. That's the deep state right there, if there was ever one. So but you got to be able to say, this is the guy that did it. Paul Weyrich, he's the one that made abortion an issue. You know, it, if you're able to do that, then I think you're able to get through them. All right, Margaret, I did want to make sure that I covered this. So you said Pete Buttigieg is great at that. So here's the thing about Pete, and let me start by saying I think that Pete is a great guy. I think he could even be a good president one day, potentially. I have some reservations. The problem with Pete is that he comes across exactly like the kind of person that MAGA will never listen to, right? So he used to be in Mackenzie, if I remember right. He's a guy that speaks multiple languages. He comes across very academic. Uh, he he's gay, and that to them, just right there, he loses 20 or 30 points. So I think we have to be careful both about our message and the messengers, right? So like even me, right? So I was born in Brazil. I got a little bit of an accent. I mean, I do have the fact that I look like I could be a skinhead, but because I'm white and I got a shaved head, but I'm probably not the best messenger to try and convince them of anything, because I was born in another country. So if I had to push someone to be the messenger, it would not be me. I have no problem doing it. I do it all the time, but there are better messengers than me to deliver the message to them. So I think we have to be careful about both the message and the messenger. I think that Tim Walz was really great. He's from Minnesota. He is an old white guy. So there's that. Um, so I think that it's about, you want to have everything going for us to help deliver the message. I think that Jasmine and AOC are great. I personally think that Jasmine Crockett is literally the best of all the people in the Democratic Party right now. But again, looking from the point of view of MAGA, she suffers from being a black woman. So she's got two things going against her. And I know that she is able to get through to a lot of people on the Republican Party, but just that alone is a challenge. Do I think that she couldn't do it? I think that she can, because the one thing that she does have going for her is that she's extremely authentic. She's funny, she's smart. So I think that she could definitely be a strong messenger, even more so than AOC. I like AOC, but I think that Jasmine is a stronger leader. But what's the most important thing, though, is that we don't need to hold the leader. Like, if we need to have one person to do a thing, that's like when it comes time for election. What we really need is the entire Democratic Party to act in unison. So it has to be more than just AOC. It has to be more than just Jasmine Crockett. It has to be more than just Tim Walz. It has to be more than just any person that you think is good. And that is very challenging, because I don't see any kind of unison in their messaging. I don't know, like, how often they meet. I don't know if when they meet, if they talk about a unified message. I honestly don't know. I can't tell. It makes no sense to me. So again, it goes back to what I was saying before, that I don't think that there's an actual leadership in the Democratic Party. It's really a followship. They just follow the polls. They follow whatever is in the air, like whatever messaging. And then if there's not something that's pushing through as the thing that they need to follow, then they just sit back. They freeze, and they wait, and they hope for the Republican Party to trip and stumble on their own. So it goes back to what I've been saying. We have to build the momentum. We have to build the message to a scale that they see it and that they follow it. Does that make sense? And again, that's the part that I think is the most challenging. How do we grow our messaging to a critical mass that the Democratic Party actually picks it up? It's actually funny. I had thought about billboards. They're kind of expensive, though. I know that, like, hey, it's like $1,000 to get a billboard, but that is actually something that I had thought about. I think that one of the things that I have been thinking about, I also have a Discord. I don't publicize it a lot, but one of the things I've been thinking about is to use the Discord to build a large group of people that all follow each other on social media and to coordinate when we post things and build that group to where it when somebody posts something, everybody else can go there and like it and share it and repost it to essentially start, kind of like using the algorithm to our advantage, right? So like if we had like, I don't know, 200 people or whatever, and one of us posts something and everybody else reposts it, it will push it pretty far in the algorithm, whether it's Blue Sky or X or whatever. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about. Um, give me 1 second. Let me just try something here. Um, we should brainstorm what to say. So, well, what do you mean, like on social media or in person when talking to people? What do you mean? Um, so what we could do, one thing that I've been thinking about, um, I had started creating memes a while back. So one thing we could possibly do, I can do some more of that, and we can kind of work on it together and kind of create memes that we can share. That's one easy way to do it, because then it's like we've got this one image that we can all share at different times, and when we see it, we can all repost it. So I think that that's one thing that could be pretty easy to do. Um, what do you guys think about that? Because I could probably do that. And then the social media groups, that could work too, like on Facebook. I guess is what you mean. Yeah, I agree. CFV. The crazy things that Democrats they're so good at raising money, but it's like they never seem to really put it to good use. All they do is the TV ads that nobody seems to care about anymore. The one good thing is that I think that they did learn that from the last election. I think that they realized, like, they got out. Democrats, I think, outspent Republicans almost 2-1, and we still lost. So, and a lot of what we did was TV ads. So I think at least they learned that lesson, that we can't just do the TV ads and hope for the best. So I'm hoping that somebody, and maybe the new guy in the DNC, I forgot his name, but I'm hoping that he's going to start investing on creators and social media instead of ads. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that that's going to be the key right there for them. That's it. Cam Martin, thank you. Thank you, Laurie. Um, because when he was running, he did talk about social media quite a bit and the importance of uh, getting a foothold on social media. So I'm hoping that they'll raise some funds and somehow put money towards that. Will that happen? I don't know, but one can hope, of course. So, but going back to the idea, I think that the memes are pretty good. One thing that I might do, um, I already have a bunch of memes that I had created. Some are just text based, some of them are image based. Maybe I'll create like a zip file and I'll drop it in an article somewhere. Um, I might create a different section on Substack so that it doesn't spam everybody with it. And then I'll brainstorm the best way to do it. But I can send it out, and then you guys can, we can use them and we can create more. And if you guys have ideas too, I'm always open to ideas. So one thing that I'll drop a link in the chat. Well, maybe I'll do it later. But again, I think that the Discord is a pretty good spot to strategize. So maybe I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It looks pretty overwhelming at first, but once you get a hang of it, it's pretty easy to use, and it's really easy to share memes and stuff like that. So just something to think about. But let me just read some of the messages here. Oh yeah, Dawn, that's exactly right. So one of the things that I've been kind of like screaming about now almost for months is that there are things that the right wing have done that have been extremely successful, that it blows my mind that Democrats don't do, that people on our side don't do, and memes are one of them. They they drive so much engagement. They drive their message so much with memes, and it's crazy to me that we don't do that because they're extremely effective. But I feel like a lot of people on our side feels like they're dumb, and you know what? They are dumb, but they work. So we cannot keep doing this whole strategy of like, oh, this strategy or that strategy looks too cheap or looks too childish or whatever. The question has to be, does the strategy work? The only things that should ever stop us from using a certain strategy is, are we manipulating people with lies, and are we causing harm to anybody? If we're not harming anybody and we're not lying, then no strategy should be tossed out. The only question has to be, does it work? And if it works, we should use it. And it's crazy to me that we have left so much on the table over the years. I remember going back all the way to Gamergate in like 2014 or 2015, and there was so much that they did to drive their message and to build their right wing ecosystem. The way that they build their messaging on YouTube, how they're there. A lot of YouTube channels are right wing, but they're not political. They're very subtle in how they deliver that message. Maybe they're talking about, I don't know, food. Maybe they talk about their hobbies. Maybe they talk about traveling. But there's always a little bit of right wing ideology behind everything that they do. I don't think I have ever seen anything like that on our side. A big problem that I think we have is that we're afraid to talk about politics. And it's not so much that we're afraid, it's that it's not polite. I think that needs to go. I think, it's like, I always know if somebody I know is MAGA because they make it obvious what it is they believe in, but I can never tell for sure if somebody's a Democrat or not. Like some of my best friends in life, I assume they're a Democrat because they haven't made it clear that they're MAGA, because they just don't talk about politics. And we need to stop doing that. Um, it we have to be willing to be proud of what it is that we believe in, because we are the ones that actually believe in the right things. We're the ones that, believe that parents should be able to have free paid leave so that they can, spend time with their newborn child. We're the ones that believe that people should be able to feed themselves and their family and have a dignified wage. We're the ones that believe that people shouldn't be bankrupted by medical debt. We're the ones that have the right message. So it blows my mind that we seem to be afraid to tell people what it is that we believe in. Meanwhile, the other side is proud to talk about throwing children in cages and split up families and throw them out of the country. We can't let that continue be a thing that we do. So, you know, one thing that I like to tell people is that a lot of the problems we have to do with how we behave and how we act. Even more so, a lot of it you can put aside what the other side is doing. A lot of it is what we're doing or what we're not doing, and that adds to it. So, we really need to change the way we just think about our own ideology. Another thing we have to do is we have to take back patriotism. You know, the right, they I don't know how they got to own the flag and and to own the idea that they're patriots without us really doing anything to stop that or to take that back, because none of what they do really represents what America is supposed to be. And I don't say this because I'm an immigrant, but that's what this country has been built on. It has been on immigration. It has been about being a melting pot of different cultures. It has been, even now, like the way that Donald Trump acts, he's basically a fascist. And the one thing that that this country has done right is beat fascists. If you really think about uh, the Civil War, that was to a large degree fascism, and then of course you had World War II. We beat them again. So that's something that unites this country. That should unite this country. And now somehow the other side gets to be the fascist and claim patriotism. So we need to take that back. We need to take that away. We need to start talking. We need to build patriotism back into our messaging as well. We need to sound like we're proud to be Americans. We need to sound like we are proud of this country. And that's not to say that we need to pretend that the country doesn't have a lot of flaws in its history. We don't have to pretend that, racism doesn't exist or that it didn't exist. We don't have to pretend that slavery was not a thing. That's not what I'm talking about. Which is what they're trying to do. We have to own patriotism. We have to show that we are the real Americans, not these people that, have no problem with throwing people out of the country, not these people who are, racist and bigots. We have to take patriotism away from them. So that's another thing too. And I think that there is a part of everybody in the Republican base, and this is hard to explain. Like, think of a person and anybody on the Republican base. I almost feel like there is a 10 to 15% of their ideology where they end up on that side just because they claim patriotism. So if we can take that away from them, just that alone, I think they would lose a chunk of their base. So I think we really need to start making loving America and all that a part of the messaging. And again, one thing, and I remember learning this back when I was in high school. It was the difference between patriotism and nationalism, right? And the biggest difference between patriotism and nationalism is that the nationalist thinks that their country is perfect. And whether it's a blood and soil kind of thing like the Nazis, or sort of what we have here in the United States now, where they just think that America is exceptional and can do no wrong, that's nationalism, right? Patriotism is loving your country for its ideals while being willing to recognize that it's not perfect and being able to acknowledge what it is that needs to be changed so that you can continue in that right path. And I think that we have to take the mantle of patriotism and show that the other side, they're not patriots, they're nationalists, and that is not bad. But we can't do that unless we're being patriotic, right? So that's something that needs to be in the message too. It's part of the reason that, as I've been working on the logo for the American Manifesto, that's why it's red, white, and blue. It's a phoenix, right? So you will see the flag in a lot of the stuff I do. The idea is to show that, not only do we love America, we are America. Our values are America. And if you want to claim that you love America, you have to fall in with us, not with them. Because what they're doing is not loving America. They're distorting everything that America stands for. So it's definitely something that needs to be in our messaging, because then we can take that away from them. Let me read a couple messages here. Focus on the globalists and they took advantage of it. Yeah, so Dom brings up a good point, and I don't know if that's where you were going, but that's where I'm going to go. One big problem that the Democratic Party has goes back to Bill Clinton and globalization. And I think the way that globalization should have played out, we should have created something like, kind of like Social Security. But imagine if the country had its own stock in a way, right? So we're going to call it the USA stock. I think what should have happened with globalization is that as corporations took advantage of globalization and they started exporting labor to outside of the country, the people in the country, workers that were losing their jobs, they should have been issued those USA stocks. Okay. And then there should have been a tax that the corporations that were exporting the labor out, that they should pay, that would then pay out to those people that have the USA stocks, almost like a dividend that you would get from owning stocks, such that the people would also benefit directly from globalization, instead of the benefits going directly to the corporations and to the corporations only. Now, how do you do that? That's another conversation, but that's the principle that should have been put in place to protect the working class and the middle class in the United States from, the corporate greed of globalization. Because what did happen instead is that we shipped out a lot of the jobs, and all of the benefits went to the corporations. And like it or not, the Democratic Party played a lot into that in the 90s. And that is something that, you know, if you're trying to, again, stick to the truth, you're not going to be able to hide from that. And one of the things in one of my articles is that the Democratic Party has to acknowledge that he made a lot of mistakes, especially in the realm of globalization. There's a couple of other mistakes too. The 1994 crime bill was a big mistake. The cuts to the safety net, I think, was in 96. That was a mistake. I think we need to acknowledge that the short version, we have to acknowledge that the Democratic Party went Republican light in the 90s, and that caused a lot of pain to people all throughout the country. And I honestly think that if the Democratic Party can deliver that message with like actual honesty and to say, look, that was a mistake, we recognize it, it's time to fix it, I think we can gain a lot of people that are not Republicans. Because you got to remember, you know, after the New Deal going to the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, a lot of working class people, they used to be Democrats, you know, and to George's point, deregulation, that was a mistake too. Yeah. You know, and Democrats played into that to a degree. They weren't, it was always a Republican thing to do deregulation, that they're the ones that pushed it hard, but Democrats played along. So I think that we have to acknowledge those mistakes, and we have to tell the American people that, look, we, you know, when Reagan and I think the honest truth is that when Reagan beat the Democrats in 1980, it was such a shellacking that it literally broke the Democratic Party. They thought that the only way they could continue to exist was to be Republican light. And from that point on, to a large degree, they did abandon the working class and the middle class to a degree, not the same degree that the Republican Party has always done, but to a degree they capitulated. And I think that the Democratic Party has to be able to acknowledge that and move away from that. And, you know, that's basically what, you know, that would make the Democratic Party the party of Bernie Sanders, essentially, to a large degree. Excuse me. If we do that, I have no doubt that we can turn things around. But again, that's at the Democratic Party level. How we get there, man, that's going to be a challenge. I think there's some opportunity now. You know, Bernie Sanders is very. A lot of people are starting to listen to him again. A lot of people are listening to Elizabeth Warren again, but again, that's a whole other story. That's how we rebuild the Democratic Party. You know, I've written a little bit about that as well. But that's a process. That's going to be a long-term thing. You know, going back to where we are now, I really think that the messaging is going to be the key, and it's going to have to be driven by us. So that's where that's at. And to agree with Dawn, yes, Nixon definitely broke the system, and Reagan. I mean, Reaganomics was a disaster. It blows my mind that the Republican base have not realized how much of a scam it is. And then that reminds me of how strong their propaganda is, because it should be obvious to anybody that trickle-down economics, that Reaganomics, all of that was, you know, has been a disaster. But, you know, here we are. Anybody that watches Fox News and anybody that's, you know, watching Ben Shapiro or whoever, they're, you know, it's almost impossible to get that through to them. Let me see here. Laurie, we also have to find a way to reach all of the non-voters. If we can do that, it should be a huge accomplishment. The question is how. Okay, so the non-voters, yeah, that's a big topic. Um, the only thing that I can think about for the people that are tuned out is that we needed to get our pop uh, our pop people like Taylor Swift, all of these people to get involved in politics. Um, I mean, if Taylor Swift started sending one message on Instagram a week talking about something politics related, like whether it's healthcare for all or whatever, pick a topic, we would get we would get so many of the people that are tuned out to get tuned in. It would be incredible. Um, so one of the things that I would like to do again, as we're building a messaging strategy and we're building a movement, is to get the people in the movement, whoever your favorite um, popular figure is, try to reach out to them via social media or whatever, try to push them to take a stance in politics. Try to push them to pick a side. Don't be an ass about it, but try to kind of like get them to pick a side and to get involved, because I don't see how else we get to the people that are tuned out. Um, and if you guys have any other ideas, I'm happy to brainstorm on that. But that has been one of the most challenging things that I think about a lot of the time, is how do we get people to get tuned in, because it's a third echo chamber if you think about it, right? You've got the Democratic echo chamber on one side, you have the right wing echo chamber on the other side, and then you have the I don't care about politics echo chamber, essentially, right? If you if you're watching YouTube, there's a lot of people that they never really come across politics, and they don't care and they don't want to know. The only other thing that you can do is to try and talk to people who seem to be tuned out. If you know somebody personally, if you have friends, if you have family, to try and slowly but surely uh, bring it up to them and warm them up to the importance of it. You know, one of these days, as I do live streaming, I'll see if I can get my best friend in here to chat, and he'll tell you, you know, he used to not care about politics even a little bit. It took a while, but now he does care because I'm always bringing it up. So you can definitely make a difference when it comes to the people around you, to get them to realize, like, one thing that I've told my best friend now for a long time is, at the end of the day, politics can have a bigger impact in your life than anything you can do yourself, right? Like, think before the Affordable Care Act, how many people could not get health insurance because they had a pre-existing condition? There was nothing that they could do. And, if you didn't have a college degree, if you didn't have a good job, there was nothing you could do to get health insurance. And if you're somebody that were tuned out, one day this guy called Obama comes around and he gets the Affordable Care Act through, and all of a sudden, now you can get health insurance. And it's not something you did, it's something that happened in politics. And that's a tiny example, because the Affordable Care Act should have been so much more than what it was. And there's so much more that can be done that will improve people's lives immensely. And all we need is to get them to vote for the right people, right? So, I always try to tell people that are tuned out of politics, hey, you may not like it, but, like it or not, politics has just as much impact in your life as anything you can do, whether it's going to college, whether it's, learning a trade or a skill. What happens in politics matters. And I feel like not many people have that conversation with the people that they know. and as a result, you have a third of the country. Almost, was it? I think 30. There was more people that didn't vote for anybody than people who voted for either party in the last election. It's definitely a problem. And if we could get even a small part of them to come to our side, we could greatly change the country. So, um, it's I'm glad that you brought that up about the people that don't vote. They're a big chunk of people that we need to try and get them in. Excuse me. So there's that too. Let me see here. So now just to go back to the whole thing with the tariffs, um, I'm slightly concerned that, and it's not just the tariffs, everything else, that they are slowing down. And I think that one of our primary missions right now needs to be to keep people engaged. Uh, we cannot afford to let people think that because they're slowing down, that everything is going to be fine. Um, One thing that I saw Mike Johnson saying passing, I think it was yesterday, is that Congress is about to try and legislate all the stuff that Doge has been doing, right? So I think the idea is going to be to say, hey, look, it's not just Doge doing it. It's not unconstitutional. We're doing it through Congress, right? And one of my fears is that people will see that and then they will be like, oh, okay, I guess Congress is doing it, then it's fine. So we need to find a way to keep people engaged. We need to find a way to keep the message going. And we have to make sure that people don't get, slow cooked like a frog. Um, and that is one thing that I have not yet figured out how to do. Um, the primary reason being that, again, the American Manifesto is still pretty small. It's not like we're a massive YouTube channel or anything like that. So I'm not sure how we do that. Again, if anybody has any ideas, I'll take that. But the main thing that we can do right now is to try and grow this movement and try to get some other people in. One thing I'm hoping to try to do in the near future is to start collaborating with some other creators, both on Substack and in other platforms. That's part of the reason why I wanted to try and do the live stream today. I want to try and do a lot more video coming up, so that we can get noticed more. So so that we can. The idea is that if we can find a few people that believe in this message that already have a megaphone, then we can grow much faster. So that's part of the plan. See here, companies that benefit from the knowledge. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Wikiman. If you want to explain a little better, I can go over what you have there. Oh yeah, Laurie. That's everything. Having the megaphone. That's the key. At the end of the day, and it may sound like jealousy, but it's frustrating to see so many people out there that have megaphones, but who don't really use it. I'm not going to name names here, but there are other creators and platforms that have a huge reach, but I honestly don't get the feeling that they're trying to make anything better. I feel like they're just like farming the drama, and I don't see them offer any kind of messaging strategy. I don't see them uh, push for any kind of change. It's I like to call them stenographers, right? All they do is narrate all the different ways that our country is falling apart, and I find that very frustrating because legacy media was already doing that. We there is no advantage to having independent media if independent media is only going to do whatever legacy media is already doing. Just because you're doing it from your living room and just because you're a low cost operation, that doesn't really make you any better than legacy media. If and it's it and not only are you just doing the same thing that legacy media was already doing, you're sucking up the oxygen, right? You know maybe you sound very entertaining, maybe you're really fun to watch, and I mean, I'm still kind of learning this whole, especially with the video thing. I'm certain that I don't talk as well as some of the YouTubers and whatnot, but cool, they're entertaining, but they're not they're not doing anything that changes anything. And it's just a bit frustrating. And I don't want to call them grifters. Um, I think that a lot of them have good intention, but I feel like a lot of them don't have necessarily a plan. You know. All right, Georgia, good to see you, and I'll see you next time. I'm probably going to be heading out in a little bit too. My throat is starting to feel a little bit uh, funny. I'm not used to talking so much. I'll have to set something up so that some people can hop on voice as well, so that I'm not the only one talking in the future. Oh, you're welcome, Georgia. No, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Um, so I think that my hope is that as I reach out to other people that have bigger megaphones, that they will also realize that we need to do better than just narrate what's going on, and that we do need a messaging strategy, and to help build that messaging strategy so that we can turn things around. Um, so that's the plan. Um, that's the plan as far as the American Manifesto is concerned, at least, is to continue building a messaging strategy, start collaborating with some bigger platforms. Um, One thing that I would like to do at some point, if I'm able to, is to set up like a regular podcast where I can invite people in and I can have some of the conversations like we're having now, um, especially with people that have reach, whether they're in the Democratic Party, whether they are uh, creators in the media space. Um, One thing that I would even like to try to do is to bring in uh, people who are MAGA and to just try and have a conversation with them and see how that goes. I think that could be like an interesting experience too, because if we can get some people that our message succeeds in kind of like opening them up and getting them to leave the cult, I think that can be a very powerful thing to talk to the Democratic Party and to talk to other people on our side to say, here, look, this strategy works. It's not just a theory. Here's, we have results. So um, I think that would be something interesting thing to do. Oh yeah, Laura. Yeah, that would be awesome. Like one of the things that I'll ask anybody here, if you if there's somebody you follow, another creator or anything like that, and if you're able to say, hey, talk to this guy, bring him in, have a conversation with him, or have them come over here, we can have a chat online just like this, and we can build some connections, and that's what it's about. I think if we can build some strong connections with other people, that can really go a long way. So that's definitely another part of the plan as well. um, Let me think. I think that, like I said, my throat is starting to feel a little bit funny, so I'm going to. If anybody has any questions before I head out, I'm happy to answer them, either about the American Manifesto or anything like that. Otherwise, I'm probably going to hop out and see if I can get something warm to drink. And then, of course, I probably should say this. If anybody who's here, if you are able to become a paid subscriber to the American Manifesto, that would be awesome. It would really help keep this going. My goal is to make this the primary thing that I do. Um, so if you are able to, that would be awesome. And then, of course, there is the little Bezos Bucks thing that I had put together. Let me grab a link. If anybody here has Amazon Prime and you wouldn't mind taking 5 minutes of your time, there is a way that you can help the American Manifesto, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. So let me grab this link. I'll drop it in the chat. Just check that out. It has all the instructions there. It literally takes less than 3 minutes, and you will literally take money out of Amazon and give it to the American Manifesto at no cost to you. Yeah, thank you, Don. I'll probably do that. My wife has like 20 kinds of different teas, so I'll probably ask her to hook me up with one of her teas and put some honey in it. Yeah, Lori, I'm gonna try and do this at least a few times a week. Um, I think it might be cool to, along with the Doge tracker, to cover whatever happened in the news either the same day or the day before. So I'm kind of brainstorming what to do with the live podcast, but definitely is going to be something that I'll keep doing. All right then. So I am going to say a good night to y'all. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And this was fun. I enjoyed doing it, and it's definitely going to be happening quite a bit in the future. Have a good night. I'll see you next time.